Hold on, what was I going to fucking say? I had something. Oh my God, I don't remember now. Jesus. Fuck, I'll remember it later.
Tell everybody to go out and vote.
No, I don't remember what the fuck it was now. It's going to come to me afterwards. No, you did.
What is it?
I don't remember. Don't remember.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside of me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie takes to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, and our YouTube channel, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
So, Gene, part of being a member of the Shat community is interacting with us, interacting with each other on our Discord server, or joining us for some of our live recordings, or just communicating on social media and about our shared love of movies. But you've expanded it. We have some fantasy leagues. We do a Premier League. We've done, I think we just wrapped up our second annual baseball league, which even got you invested in finding a sixth starter on maybe a last place American Central team. Got you into baseball. We've done a couple NBA, and then we did the football. And Steve, Hot Sauce Steve, our iconic Mount Rushmore Steve, commissioned more movies than I can remember. He's the commissioner of all of our leagues. He manages it. He organizes it. He sets the draft up. Great guy. Now, I don't know if there was some shenanigans going on, because I think the man has won it more than once. And that's where this commission comes from. The reward for joining and winning one of our fantasy football or whatever fantasy leagues is you get to choose your movie. So Steve, tonight, he asked us to go back onto the runway and strut our stuff as we dive into the high-pressure world of the male modeling industry, as we go back to 2001 and review the Ben Stiller written and directed classic, Zoolander.
Now, Hot Sauce Steve is very particular about the way he wants his things. He's
very
not afraid to get in touch with us and say, watch this version, do this movie. I want it in the 2000s, but always politely. And he wrote in to explain why he wanted Zoolander. He said, hello, Shat crew. Thanks to everyone who plays in the Fantasy Football League each year, as it's a lot of fun. Being the winner of last year's Shat Fantasy Football, I decided to go with Zoolander. Having just rewatched it last weekend for the first time in many years, I have to say it's one of those movies I remember being a lot better than it actually was. Don't get me wrong, it still has a lot of great moments, but the movie as a whole is not as great as I remember. Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson, Will Farrell, Christine Taylor, and Mila Jovovich were perfect casting. Besides the giant orange turd, I think he's referring to Donald Trump, the many cameos were really great too, but they can be forgiven for having him in it, as it was 2001 and we didn't completely know how terrible he actually was. Overall, I think Zoolander is an above average movie and would give it somewhere in the range of 1.5 to 2 wipes. I've rewatched frat pack movies like Old School and Dodgeball more recently and would probably put both of those above this one. Can't wait to hear what the crew thinks. Have a great day. Hot Sauce Steve from Minnesota. Go Lions.
Yeah, Steve has a specific way he wants things done. So hopefully tonight goes his way. But I don't know. We'll see. He came in a little harder on this. He gives some weird scores. You can't predict what Steve's going to do.
I like that he's at least honest. And if you can kind of see where he's going with this too, because with this, his other commission of Forgetting Sarah Marshall, mentioning Old School, mentioning Dodgeball, I think Steve is trying to propel us bravely into the new millennium, and we'll see how that goes. Zoolander is a 2001 comedy directed by and starring Ben Stiller that contains elements from a pair of short films written by Stiller for the VH1 Fashion Awards television specials in 1996 and 1997. So it's got 90s ties. A satire on the fashion industry, the film follows fashion model Derek Zoolander, played by Stiller, who is tricked by fashion mogul Jacomim Mugatu, played by Will Farrell, to assassinate the Prime Minister of Malaysia, whose progressive laws on the fashion industry would harm his businesses. The film was both a critical and box office success, and a sequel, Zoolander 2, was released in February 2016. An animated film, Zoolander Supermodel, was released on Netflix UK in August 2016. So Big D, we've heard about Hot Sauce Steve's opinions on Zoolander. I'd like to hear from you. What are your memories of this movie?
So there's some movies you remember the film and a little bit about where you were. This is a little different because we're into the 2000s. So this is a film I watched as an adult. It's more recent, 24 years ago. And it had some really memorable moments in my life. And it didn't really soak in until a little bit later on in the film, until it ended. This film was a big part of a time in my life. So when this came out in September of 2001, it was only a few weeks after September 11th. There was actual scenes where in the Manhattan skyline, you could see the Twin Towers. That was obviously removed. Now, fast forward, I didn't see it at that point. I was in the military. I was a little busy when September 11th happened. So the following summer in 2002, my unit deployed to West Point. In the summer, they have like a summer, I don't want to say summer camp because it makes it sound too like fun. Hey, it's summer camp. But all the cadets in the summer, they go through individual training with units from around the country. So our unit went there and I ran the demo range, teaching them how to use explosives. And then also we ran the rifle range. So we spent the summer living in these big tents, like 30 of us in each one. It was a location up in West Point called like Camp Natural Bridge. So it was a site where each year, units come in, they set up their tents. We had one tent with maybe a 25, 30-inch TV, one of those old like CTRs, a DVD player, and a small book of DVDs. The two movies I vividly remember being played over and over again was a bootleg copy of Zoolander and Not Another Teen Movie. We watched them constantly. I have memories of that summer watching them. And then the 4th of July, which was a cool moment, we got a police escort and they drove us down to Lower Manhattan and they held a re-enlistment ceremony in Bedrock of Ground Zero. So we were down there and I get goosebumps now thinking about it. There was that moment in time where the flags were everywhere, where everyone was pro-police, pro-fire, pro-military. You'd walk around in the uniform. There was nothing I felt like that. And of course, a couple months after it kind of faded a bit. But I remember that summer watching this film. I could be back in that tent. I could smell it, like the wet fabric of the tent and just everything going on. And until this commission, Steve, I had remembered bits and pieces, but this, like any movie or movies do occasionally, they'll put you back in the moment. So I went back a long time ago and realized how much I remember this movie.
Not to make this a podcast about 9/11 instead of the fashion world in the 2000s, but it's crazy to think about it. I didn't really think about it until you mentioned it. That was more than 20 years ago. And kids today, like my niece and nephew, your daughter, they didn't really experience that world, like a unified. It wasn't just that the US was all together, like left and right, everybody was together, but also like the world was with us. And it's just crazy to think how different things are now 20 years later, and that they may never experience a world like that. It was an incredible feeling at the time. I mean, obviously we were in mourning. Things were not great, but it really, I think, brought out some of the best aspects of Americans as a nation, as a society. And I hope we get back to that point someday.
And I think we'll get into it, but it was also a unique period of history in 2001, where we were technologically, where we were socially, where we were in how we communicated. So even if September 11th, say, happened today, I don't think we would react the exact same way. So I don't know that we are capable of ever going back to a time where we weren't divided and siloed more than ever. I don't think it's possible.
No, it would immediately be blame. The truthers and the inside job crowd would be probably the prevalent voice, right, in the entire argument.
It is impossible that you could have more than 3 people in the military set up an operation. This would have been probably hundreds, if not thousands. There's no way you could keep a secret. You just couldn't do it. I couldn't keep a secret between 3 people in the military. They're the worst at keeping secrets. This would be out there. Within a week, somebody would have been caught. There would have been pictures. Somebody would have bragged to a girl in the bar. No, this was not an inside job.
You weren't supposed to tell anybody about Zoolander at Camp Natural Bridge. That just came out here exclusive on the Shat The Movies podcast.
Dun dun.
Big D, getting our heads into that era. Zoolander hit when Ben Stiller was like super hot at the box office. It's hard to stress how big he was at the time. So in the years leading up to Zoolander, we had There's Something About Mary, which was a huge hit. We had Permanent Midnight, which was a little bit different, kind of showing another side to Ben Stiller, much like Jim Carrey was kind of doing dramatic roles at the time. Then you had Mystery Men, which was sort of ahead of its time in its approach to comic book characters, like way ahead of The Boys and stuff like that. It was a little more alt comics. And then you had Meet the Parents, which led to that entire huge franchise and was, again, something that people were raving about because they just hadn't seen anything like that. Ben Stiller was top of the world. And I liked him a little bit better than a lot of the other guys. I even liked him better than Jim Carrey at the time because he was just as funny as the other guys, but there was like this darkness in the mix. There was an aggression, and he reminded me a lot of guys that I hung out with and their style of comedy. And so seeing Zoolander was a no-brainer for me. I wanted to see it as soon as it came out. Later that year, we got the Royal Tenenbaums a few months later. I think it was like in December. That was released, and it really cemented Ben Stiller in my heart as like a must-see actor. Since then, I haven't really watched a lot of his stuff, and it was good to go back.
Yeah, he's done a lot of producing. So in there, he even did like Blades of Glory. He did Dodgeball. He produced it, Starsky and Hutch, and some of the romantic stuff like Duplex with Jennifer Aniston. So he's was prolific at this time. But some of these movies, and I'm going to beg our listeners to commission another one. His movies, like 2001 being a different time, you could not do many of his movies today. You couldn't. There would be protests the second that you brought up some of the topics. Something About Mary with my baseball. There's no way that shit's going down today.
Tropic Thunder. Yeah.
Oh, that's the one. That's the one. Yes. Yes. Robert Downey Jr. in blackface and then being nominated for major acting awards. Yeah, it was a different time.
You know what to do, Steve. Let's hit the trailer.
He's suave, debonair,
so courageous.
the epitome of cool.
You rule.
His name is Zoolander. Derek Zoolander.
He's almost too good looking.
International male supermodel.
The style and the hair, you know, it's almost like the new afro for the white man.
But behind those eyes is a highly trained man of action.
You rock. No, you rock.
And perhaps the world's only hope of stopping a sinister assassination plot.
The fashion industry has been behind every major political assassination over the last 200 years. And behind every hit, a male model.
So why male models?
They do as they're told.
That is not true.
Yes, it is, Derek.
Okay.
Ben Stiller. Owen Wilson. Will Farrell.
They're breakdance fighting. Taste my pain!
Christine Taylor.
When I was in 7th grade, I became bulimic.
You can read minds.
Zoolander
Must be eliminated.
They must use all their skills.
If I can create a basic disguise for us with this professional makeup kit, we may just be able to sneak in undetected.
Surprise! Did you find the files? They're in the computer.
They're in the computer?
To outsmart the most dangerous organization on the planet.
We got 30 years worth of files right here in this computer that are gonna bring you down. Woo! Yeah!
Oh no.
Where'd all the files go?
And still find time to help the children.
I give you the Derek Zoolander Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good.
What is this?
A center for ants.
How can children learn how to read if they can't even fit inside the building?
Zoolander.
In New York City, male model Derek Zoolander is at a low point. He is ousted as the top male fashion model by rising star Hansel McDonald. His roommates and colleagues are killed in a freak gasoline fight accident, and an attempt to reconnect with his southern New Jersey working class relatives ends with the family rejecting him.
So we just talked about Ben Stiller's multiple movies that he's acted, produced. He always seems to play the same type of character, usually high-strung, usually a little awkward. You think of like Meet the Fockers, Meet the Parents, Dodgeball, this. He wasn't my favorite character. Everybody thinks of Zoolander. I don't think Zoolander is who carries this movie. We get it. He's not smart. That trope, this was based off of a small skit you mentioned about him looking in the mirror and doing like some daily affirmation. To me, it got a little tired. Yes, he's stupid. He's unaware. He doesn't know how dumb he is. I enjoy when he goes to the coal mine to see his dad and his brothers. That was funny. For me, what saves the movie is the polar opposite of the male modeling industry. Derek is the iconic, the more structured, traditional male model. And then you get Hansel. And Hansel is that exotic. He's not quite beautiful. I don't want to name any models that we've had who aren't quite traditionally beautiful, but there's something about them. He shows up on a Razor scooter. He wields a yo-yo literally as a weapon. He's funny. He's got a big group of friends. He's got a cool lair they hang out with in his apartment. It looked like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They had everything in there a kid would want. They have roulette, which the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had. They got kids skating. He's playing a lot of music in his place. He's hanging out with people. He's got some Finnish dwarves. He's got tribesmen. For him to come into this movie, it balanced it out. If you had another model like Derek, it would have not been able to, it wouldn't be the same film.
I'm not sure I entirely agree, but this might be coming from a very personal place because Hansel, he's the guy that I really hate in real life because he's full of shit, but nobody else can see it. Right? When I'm like, no, he's bad. Don't you see him? They're like, no, man, he's cool. Like, he's so laid back. He's so interesting. And I'm like, no, he's not. Really, at his core, he's a really bad person. He acts all enlightened and mystical, but really, Hansel's just as dumb as Derek. I mean, we see it in the computer scene, right? He's just as dumb. Or he'll tell you a whole story and then tell you, oh, but I just hallucinated the whole thing. And Big D, as a guy who on this podcast has been very vocal about the fact that he hates Gwyneth Paltrow for steaming her vagina, I'm surprised that you're not calling out Hansel for all this new age crap because he is full of it.
Yes, he is full of it. But I think it's we're comparing the two. He's great in comparison, but I don't know that it's all bullshit. I believe that he was, sunbathing off of the coast of St. Bart's with spider monkeys. Yes, he had a bad trip and he dreamed about like falling into Mount Vesuvius. But he admitted it. He didn't get caught in a lie. He's spiritual. He says, just don't get, caught in this like negative mindset. Trust the tea. Trust the power of the tea. He's a generous lover. He didn't mind letting the Finnish dwarves join in sexually and become intimate with them. He's a Zen character. He's the complete opposite.
Big D, you mentioned that Hansel is not like traditionally handsome. And I really like this funny thing that Zoolander did. I didn't notice it when I was younger. I didn't understand this aspect of the film because when you're like 20 or 21 and you're looking at guys in their 30s, whether somebody's 30 or 25 or 40, you really can't tell the difference. Just like now, when I look at children, I don't know if somebody's 8 or 12. I don't know. Somebody's 20 or 30. Can't really tell, right? So Zoolander does this funny thing I never noticed in previous watches. It takes Ben Stiller and says he is the top male model. I mean, Ben Stiller's like in his mid-30s in this movie. And he's roommates with Alexander Skarsgård, who's like, 20, maybe. So the two hottest male models in this world are Derek Zoolander and Hansel McDonald. both guys in their 30s. And I'm not saying that I'm anywhere near as handsome as movie stars. I don't look like Ben Stiller or Owen Wilson, but like, I think it's a stretch to say these guys are like supermodel material. Their ears, the noses, their height, like these guys are not prime meat when it comes to looks. So it was kind of hilarious. The movie decided to make them a big deal and then surround them in a sea of actual models. So you got like Heidi Klum and Claudia Schiffer and Asio Highsmith. And like, it's this running joke that everybody's in awe of how handsome they are and their looks when they are surrounded literally in this film by every single person being better looking than them, except for maybe Gary Shandling.
Yeah, but you have like Gisele Bündchen. She is still one of the top earners, not in just modeling alone, but in total income from her cosmetic lines, her shoes, her clothes. She's still, when people say her, or like even say Naomi Campbell or Elle Macpherson, the old traditional guard, the Victoria's Secret, you hold them with a sense of reverence. They're up on the hill, and they give that to Derek. And people love him, but they all know who's the hot new guy. Who is it? Exactly.
Handsome.
So they're just giving Derek the respect he deserves, but they know he's over the hill. He's not the next phase.
Fashion mogul Jacobin Mogatu and Derek's agent Mari Ballstein are charged by the fashion industry with finding a model who could be brainwashed into assassinating the new progressive-leaning prime minister of Malaysia, whose policies will prohibit them from retaining cheap child labor in the country. Mogatu hires Derek, whom he had never worked with, to star in the next runway show for his brainwashing plan. It involves Derek being conditioned to attempt the assassination when the song Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood is played.
This movie for me served as a giant time capsule of 2001. It's mind-boggling to think this is 20 plus years ago that this was filmed and came out. And even though it is old, man, 24, you talk about kids not being born. A lot of our listeners were probably either young or not born, or who am I kidding? Probably in their 30s at that point. They're going to look at this film and say, okay, how does it compare? We talk about the movies comparing. As much as things have changed, there's a lot of things in this film about the industry that stayed very much the same. Now, granted, last couple of years, we had a little bit of where fashion was going more non-traditional, more inclusive body types. Didn't work too well. You got like Victoria's Secret. They stopped the fashion show. They're going back to the Angels. So I think we're going back towards the 2000, typical style of what a model would be, the skinny, the super hot. Today, a lot of the stuff that goes on in this movie talks about the topics of child labor. It talks about the working conditions in Bangladesh, Vietnam, China, Malaysia. Where are we talking about right now, Gene? Where there's the cheap, fast fashion, the Temu, the Shein, the Primark, those exact same markets. Nike, using basically slave labor. Nothing much has changed. You got the entire derelict. Because in 2000, there was a British designer, John Galliano, who used like worn out clothes for a hobo chic. I don't think you call it today. What did Yeezy? What did Kanye West come out with? It looked like derelict. It was that Gap and Adidas where it was like trash bags that they would have on the display racks. So a lot of this stuff has changed, but all of these topics pretty much you could bring up today.
I would trade today's fashion world for the early 2000s in a heartbeat. Like you mentioned, there were demigods walking the runway at the time, supermodels, right? Back then, they were legitimate supermodels. They came out of nowhere and they were respected for the work that they did, right? Kate Moss, Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista. Remember Alexander McQueen, my favorite fashion designer of all time. He was still alive. Shit like fucking normcore. That didn't exist, like tongue-in-cheek, like, isn't this so J. Crew? Look at me, right? Now, who's setting the trends, right? Who's up there in everybody's consciousness? Nepo babies.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fucking Jenner kids, the Hadid kids, right? And instead of beautiful people becoming rich and famous, like it was in the 2000s, now you got rich people being able to define fame and beauty. You want to look just like them.
No, it goes further. Now you have rich kids becoming beautiful.
Yeah.
Go look back at the Kardashians. Khloe looked like a Wookiee. She looked like Chewbacca pre-surgery. You even go back to Kylie.
Kylie Jenner.
Yes, Kylie Jenner. She did not look that good when she was young. There's some work done on all of these, and they became famous. Yeah, I would go back. But Gene, also, it was back then, there was a mystery. You didn't have online or social media to interact with them.
No.
All you got was that still photo of like Claudia Schiffer in like a Guess commercial or a Guess ad, or Mark Wahlberg in his underwear. You would think, man, that guy is hot. Now you hear him talk and you want to punch him in the face. Back then, there was a mystery. There was an allure to a still photo. Maybe you would see them on a red carpet and you'd wonder, what were they like? Today, we know what they're like, and we wish we didn't know them.
Big D, earlier in the pod, you talked about how Derek Zoolander isn't enough to carry this movie. And I do agree with you on that point, right? If this is a movie about Derek Zoolander, and he was just going through life and he was the big joke, like he was the punchline every time, I don't think it'd be nearly as funny as it was. I don't even know if it'd be watchable. And thankfully, we had help from guys like Will Farrell. And while Ben Stiller was cementing his place as a comic leading man in the movies that we talked about already, Will Farrell, he was doing this thing where he would just pop up in movies and consistently be the funniest guy in them. I mean, think about when we did Austin Powers, right? Austin Powers 1 and 2. He was the fucking funniest guy in there. A Night at the Roxbury, admittedly not that funny a movie, but he's definitely the funniest guy in there. Superstar, The Ladies' Man, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Like, he was popping up in movies, not being the leading man, but being hilarious. But Zoolander, Mugatu, that's another level. It's got to be the funniest thing Will Ferrell's ever done. And everyone around him just seems dull compared to Mugatu. Like, he's 10 times funnier, 20 times funnier than everybody else in the movie. The backstory, brilliant. Like, he's the guy that invented the piano necktie, and, you know, he had a totally different name, but they had to turn him into this fashion mogul. The way he moves on screen, it's kind of like the D-Light Groove Is in the Heart video. He's got like the 70s like disco swagger to him. And the fact that no matter what's happening, his response is, Hansel, he's so hot right now. I was laughing so hard at this guy. It hurt. And I think the best is that child labor brainwashing reel. Like, nobody can pull that off. That is Will Ferrell at his best. And you don't even have to watch this movie to understand that's hilarious.
No, Little Cletus. His name is Little Cletus. And if you lived under a rock and you haven't seen this, Little Cletus is an animated boy who he's talking about how his rights are being infringed upon because he wants to work. You know, back in the day, kids could work in textile factories and iron smelts. And he's got his hat and the lollipops. And I don't think he does it alone. Yes, his was the high energy, supporting role that you remember. But you also have Jerry Stiller. You got Ben's dad, iconic from Seinfeld, playing Maury Ballstein. You got John Voight, Vince Vaughn, playing his father and brother with the hair, like the wig and the mining company. And it's not like West Virginia mining, it's New Jersey mining. The cast is great. That's one thing that Stiller's always had an ability to do, to get these amazing casts to buy in. Like we talked about Tropic Thunder. If you go to another actor, a white actor, and say, I want you to play in brownface and stay in character that you're an African-American man, only Ben could get people to agree to these roles.
Karate chop.
Learn martial arts. Obey my dog.
Matilda Jeffries, feeling responsible for Derek's downfall as she wrote a scathing Time article about him, becomes suspicious of Mugatu's offer. She tells her concerns to Derek, but he ignores her. After receiving information through calls from former hand model J.P. Pruitt, Matilda and Derek meet him in a cemetery. Pruitt reveals that the fashion industry has been behind several of history's political assassinations, including Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy, and the brainwashed models are soon killed after they have completed their task. Mugatu's cronies attack the group, forcing Derek and Matilda to flee.
So the movie's surprisingly short. Hour and a half, it's fast-paced, and they got to get you into it right away. They do this thing where they're weaving real-world clips, red carpet, with people talking about Derek. They're introducing him, and they weave the Zoolander world and the real world of fashion, entertainment, and music in 2001. I was immediately thrown back into it. I was a time capsule for who was hot. It was like I was watching Carson Daly on TRL, and they were going through every industry, and you would see people you hadn't even thought of in years. some people who've changed dramatically, some people who have died, some people who have fallen off, some people who are still around. And it's that red carpet. It's not the major cameos that we'll talk about, that the ones you remember that you're like, wow, how did they get them here? These are like little real world where somebody was walking a red carpet and they quickly said, hey, give a testimonial about Zoolander. They explained it. And it is the who's who of people. And a lot of people who are now older were fresh faced and exciting. And it made me think, I can't believe I've gotten that old. It's changed. This is the time when MTV was king, when everyone had their CD player and they started making mixed CDs, and there were no cell phones with cameras. You had your little flip phone. Everyone hung out. Everybody talked. There was no social media. You'd go out to a club and people would just party and have a good time. And it made me so nostalgic. I know we say it all that time. We're the old people, or at least I'm the old man on the couch. But there was something better about it. We connected. People had more fun. People were more loose. People were more willing to take a chance. Today, everything isn't the experience. It's capturing the experience and making people feel jealous or, hey, look at me, what I'm doing. Back then, people just had fun to have fun.
I'm right there with you, Big D. And I don't want to get too Hansel on this podcast, but I recently started doing a thing as like a mental exercise, which was I'm not allowed to Google things immediately. And for me, that's huge because I see a thing, I'm curious about it, I Google it, and suddenly 30 minutes have gone by, 40 minutes have gone by. And so now I have a notepad, and if I'm curious about something, I write it down. And then at the end of the day, before I go to bed, if I want to, I can look all those things up. And guess what? Like a couple hours later, when I look at that list, I go, I don't really fucking care about that. And thinking about all those quasi celebrities that, the people that capture the zeitgeist of that era that are in this movie, you're absolutely right. I think part of it was we didn't know about them. All we saw was when they showed up on the red carpet or in a movie. You didn't know every detail about a person. You didn't have a reason to hate them. I was recently on Twitter yesterday, right? And I'm reading about how I'm supposed to not like Nick Cave or Radiohead because they support Zionists in Israel. And I'm like, dude, I never thought to connect a musician's views on the situation in Israel. Like, do I think it's genocide? Absolutely. Do I pretend like I know what Tom York of Radiohead thinks about it? No, he didn't. And it's not like he's come out right and said something. It's just the fact that it's like, well, clearly he's got a position on it because of these factors. I don't care, dude. I don't care. If I want to listen to the Benz or Kid A, just let me listen.
Yeah, it goes back to that mystique. You didn't want to know. Don't give me a reason to hate you. Don't give me a reason to dislike your art or whatever you create that I consume.
Dude, the fucking Dave Grohl thing.
Oh, yeah.
The Dave Grohl thing. I'm like, you think fucking Robert Plant wasn't fucking like 6 people while his wife was pregnant? He's a rock star. Yeah. That's what they do. What the fuck, man?
Yeah, I just don't want to know all that. Just let me listen to your music. It takes away the fun. I don't want to see the wizard behind the curtain.
Yeah.
I don't want to see how they make the sausage. I just want to eat it.
Yeah. And Fred Durst, maybe he's a great guy. I don't care. I don't need to know that. I just, want to hear about the nookie and the cookies. That's it. But Big D, getting back to the cameos, I mean, you talk to anybody about this movie, and that's usually what they bring up, right? Christian Slater, Natalie Portman, as Steve mentioned, Donald Trump, Fred Durst, Gwen Stefani, Lance Bass, Lenny Kravitz, Lil' Kim, Paris Hilton, Tyson Beckford, Winona Ryder, all incredible cameos. But there were 3 that really jumped out to me. One of them you mentioned was Vince Vaughn, because I don't think he actually said anything. He's just standing there and he's fucking hilarious. He's so tall. He's so weird looking with that wig on. David Bowie, of course, is in this movie, and I miss him terribly. It was a reminder of just how much of a loss that was. And he's so effortlessly powerful. Like, he shows up, he knows what he is. Everyone knows David Bowie is top dog in the food chain in this movie. And then, of course, David Duchovny. I forgot David Duchovny was in this as the hand model. And just for a moment, this movie, like you said, it would get monotonous if it was just about Derek Zoolander being stupid. He turns this whole movie in one scene into like a cross between like UHF and the X-Files. It gets really weird.
Yeah, when he appeared on screen, there was multiple times in this movie where something would happen and I would have to sit up and pay attention.
Yeah.
It's the funeral. And Derek is up there trying to be the Eugulgio or whatever he calls it instead of an eulogy. And he's making a comment about it. Oh, we're going to go to the after party after the funeral. And then you see out of the corner of the screen is David Duchovny like scurrying around with his hermetically sealed hand. It's crazy. And then also DJ at the end, I texted you. The evil DJ with the scar who does the karate battle while they're DJing, that's Justin Theroux. That is Jennifer Aniston's ex-husband. The Leftovers, he was in Beetlejuice as a DJ.
Did you catch John Wilkes Booth?
No.
It's our buddy Teddy Flood. It's James Marsden.
Really?
Yeah, he's got that mustache.
Get out of here.
Great.
Yeah, those were great. The historical reenactments. It's like, you're not telling me that Lee Harvey Oswald, no, he was not a model, but those two pretty boys on the grassy knoll. And those two
like high-fiving.
They're like prancing and like just shooting. Yeah, the world building's fantastic.
Well, Derek and Matilda go to Hansel's home, the last place they believe Mugatu will think to look. Derek, Hansel, and Matilda bond, with the two male models resolving their differences while partaking in Hansel's collection of tea and participating in group sex with Matilda and others. Derek and Hansel break into Maury's office to find evidence of the assassination plot, but they cannot operate his computer to find them. Big D, I normally divide movies into two groups, and I don't think I'm special in this. I think a lot of people go through this process. There's the gotta see it in the theater, and then there's the wait for streaming. And my rule is generally if it has incredible effects or sound, if it's a war movie with like big battle scenes or something like that, I'm going to go to the theater, right? And I think that's probably why Hollywood makes a lot of those movies. And, you know, we think about why those summer blockbusters are always like action movies or you know, something that's really sci-fi over the top. Well, it's because they want to get your ass in a theater and they don't want it to fall into the wait for streaming category, which is generally, for me, you know, dramas, comedies, indie films, a movie where I don't think the screen size is going to make a difference. I'll understand whether I'm watching it on a 24-inch CRT or watching it, you know, at the IMAX. It's not going to really make a difference. And Zoolander, as I'm watching it, I think this is a movie that really needed to be seen in the theater. And not because of the effects. The effects are let's face it, they're pretty bad in this movie. But it's because I wanted so badly to experience this with a crowd of idiots. There were times when I was laughing by myself, and I wanted to look around at other people and share that laugh.
So I obviously did not see this in the theater because of the time frame. Already went over it. I wasn't like
a little busy.
Yeah, September. I was like, hey, let's go to the film. Let's go see a comedy. No, but I did experience two Ben Stiller films in the theater. And you're right. It was fun. It was wild. It was loose. First one was Something About Mary. I saw when I was at Disney, and I saw it down at Pleasure Island. We went at like 1:00 in the afternoon. We brought in some drinks, and it was like nothing we had seen before. Where they show Ben Stiller's balls caught in the zipper, the whole Brett Favre reveal. It was a fun time. So the second time I did it, I was expecting something, hoping it, because of what we had seen in the trailers, was Tropic Thunder.
Oh, wow.
Went into the theater, and it opens up. Nobody knew about the previews. So you had the three fake trailers. The first one was Booty Pop and Sweat. The second one was Tug Speedman and Scorcher. And it was like Scorcher, where the earth went like apocalyptic. He saved the world. And then they're like, the last one, Scorcher, Deep Freeze, you know, when he couldn't do it again. And then the last one you get was Tobey Maguire and Robert Downey Jr. And it was called Satan's Alley. Because the character that Robert Downey Jr. was playing was supposed to be like the Russell Crowe type, the Academy Award bad boy, and they're fondling each other's beads, and you're hearing the music over the top, and it's like their forbidden love could not keep them apart. The audience, we were like, "What the hell is happening?" We didn't know what this was, and then it cuts into the movie, and it was off to the races. Racist, inappropriate jokes, disabled. You have Tom Cruise in a fat suit. That would not have been the same experience at home alone. Watching it in a group, it was a great experience. And I wish I could go back again and watch that in that environment.
Was the crowd into it?
Oh, totally into it.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think because everybody knew what it was going to be. Today, people would be like, oh, this is just terrible. Like I read an article about a couple of people who had walked out of Deadpool because they felt that when they were making like jokes about Jesus, And people were like, did you not see the first Deadpools?
Right.
Come on, people. Don't get so upset. Back then, everybody just got into it and had a good time.
A big deal. Probably never hear me say this about another movie, but another reason this movie would be better than the theater is theaters don't have subtitles. I love subtitles. I watch every movie with subtitles on, partly because I really like to read the dialogue, partly because I don't hear that well. If you can, watch Zoolander if you're able without subtitles. Ben Stiller, and I would say even more so, you pointed to Jerry Stiller, they rely heavily on surprise dialogue for their laughs. They take you in one direction and then they hit you with something else, or they're just going to say something and it takes your brain a couple seconds to catch up with what they're talking about. It's super effective. Like the scene where Matilda is telling Derek and Hansel the story of being fat in the 7th grade, and Derek just says, ew. If you read faster than they speak, then you ruin the punchline because it's not a surprise anymore. You read it before it was delivered. Trust me, if you're watching this movie, I haven't seen it for a while, just shut the captions off if you can. You're going to enjoy it so much more.
Yeah, the writing's fantastic. The jokes are good. Most of them hit. I had the subtitles on, but the timing was pretty good. So they would drop the line, then the subtitles would come up, so it didn't spoil it.
It wasn't German.
No, it wasn't German, but it didn't spoil it for me. But it's so fast-paced that half the time I was like, what the hell did they just say? And I would have to go back. And it's one of those things. Like, we've done movies. Usually comedies will fall into one of like two different types. You have the Airplane, which you famously didn't like, which was, I think for a while it held the record until Naked Gun of the most jokes per minute, where every joke that the writers could come up with, they would just throw it out there. They weren't too selective. And then you have the ones that are more selective. The jokes are spaced out. You get different types. I think Zoolander fits that perfect middle ground. You have the physical stuff. We've got the famous, the Wham! Wake Me Up Before You Go-Go montage where they're having the gasoline fight. That shit was so funny. You have the dance off, and then you also have some of the subtle jokes you've said, some of the little ones that you have to pay attention to what they're saying. For me, though, the joke that hit the most that I was not expecting was they're going to come up with a way to sneak into I think it's Ballstein or Mogato's office to look at the computer.
Yeah, Maury's office.
And Maury's office, and he pulls out the little travel makeup kit, and he goes, we can do this. They're expecting us to be in there, but they're not expecting not to be us. And then it quickly cuts. I'm expecting we're to see them in some John Candy, Who is Harry Crumb costume. No, it is immediately two different actors, different ethnicities, doing an impersonation of Derek Zoolander and Hansel. I laughed out loud. And most of the movie made me laugh, to be honest. I chuckled at a lot of them. But there were, I have to be honest, there were a few missteps. And the missteps were much fewer than the hits. Olga, the Adam Dick Strange, like the unibrow Princess Leia masseuse, didn't need to be in there. It was kind of creepy. I felt like it was forced. And the whole Derek Zoolander, the Center for Kids Who Don't Read Too Good, who's going to be able to go? It's the size of ants. And he throws it on the floor, and then they bring it back. Other than that, there was never a time that I was like, I wish that wasn't in there.
Oh, see, I was focused on a totally different thing during those scenes. Like with the school for kids who can't read good, Derek's doing his thing, but I'm more focused on Mugatu.
Okay.
So to me, it's not Derek that's funny. It's people's reactions to Derek. Olga, not funny. But Matilda walking in on that scene was very funny because you could see her trying to process, like, you just walked into this warehouse by the docks. You open the door. It's a day spa. Derek's there. You weren't expecting that. And then there's this thing, and he's got a boner. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on here? I think that was the comedy.
Okay, I agree. I'll agree with you there because that's similar to what they were doing in the cemetery scene with David Duchovny. David Duchovny goes through that long, elaborate backstory about why they choose to use male models. And he says, because models, Derek, they'll do whatever you tell them. And he goes, no, they won't. And he goes, yes, they do. And he goes, oh, yes, they will. And he totally gets Derek to do it. Or at the end when Derek says, so why did they pick male models? And he just looks at him and says, I just told you. So you're right. Maybe I focused on the wrong thing there. I should have focused more on Mugatu.
Well, Derek goes to the runway, and Mugatu's DJ plays a remix version of Relax. This activates Derek's mental programming, only for it to stop after Hansel breaks into the DJ booth and shuts off the turntable. After Hansel smashes Ballstein's computer on the floor, a guilt-ridden Maury admits to the conspiracy. Mugatu then attempts to kill the Prime Minister himself by throwing a shuriken at him, but Derek stops it by unleashing his ultimate model look, Magnum. In Derek's hometown, his father, Larry, watches the event on television and proudly acknowledges Derek as his son, while Mugatu is arrested. A few years later, Derek, Hansel, and Maury start the Derek Zoolander Center for kids who can't read good and who want to learn to do other stuff good, too. Derek and Matilda have a son named Derek Zoolander Jr., who has already developed his first modeling look. Big D, I don't know if you're super familiar with Runway. I have a secret that I should just let out to everybody on the podcast. I have done Runway, but I didn't understand what Runway was about. It's been bugging me. Why do fashion designers have runway shows? The case against the runway show. Okay, nobody's going to wear that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. The models are always looking angry for some reason. They walk super fast, which I also don't get. You'd think they'd want to go like slow so you can get a look at the clothes, but I'm no expert. Dudes are wearing shit like clogs, but with knee-high socks, and then like hot pants with like a propeller beanie, and that's the fall look. I'm embarrassed to say I'm a marketer, and the answer was right in front of me. It's marketing. It's attention. If you want attention, you need eyes on your work, but you can't just put out clothes that people are going to buy off the rack. You need to do attention-getting stuff, right? You need those celebrities. You need Fred Durst. You need Lance Bass. You need pretty people. You need Natalie Portman, you need Claudia Schiffer, and you may need to make sure that the press is there so you get that coverage so people know what your shit looks like and you're on people's minds.
Yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship. You want to demo your skill and you want to show what you could do, and the celebrities want to be there so they're in the know, so they're cool. You think, Gene, like a concept car.
Yeah.
How many times do we get a cool concept car like the Ford Bronco? When they did the concept, shit looked badass.
Yeah.
Then when it finally hits the store, it's it's the location, I think, is the new hot thing. Where you do what no one would ever dream of doing a runway show. And it's pretty exotic. Watching this movie, again, I've said it a bunch of times, this threw me back into that moment. And we've talked about, kind of pushing the threshold of Shat the Movies. What's our window? And our niche has always been 80s and 90s. But going back, this movie, it did something to me. It touched me. It's the first time where I could vividly remember really where I was. I wasn't thinking about what I thought of the movie as a kid and now adult. It's going back into that 24 years ago, where I was a younger adult, where I thought I knew everything, where I thought I knew who I would ultimately become. And going back to that time frame now and being able to look at the technology and the way people hung out and how this movie would go down today. Gene, if we just put the two biggest scenes in this film, the walk-off. Let's put the walk-off today. That doesn't go down like this, where it's a secret location and everybody's walking and people are telling their friends, hey, it's a walk-off. It's a walk-off. They get there and Derek does that, tries to do that crazy monk move and pull off his underwear like Hansel pulls off. Everybody's got their phone out. Everybody's tweeting it. Everybody's doing it on TikTok. It would be such a different experience. Or even, let's talk about, we have the Hansel's Hangout. Do you think anybody would feel comfortable enough? Maybe it's a bad topic because, you got P. Diddy's parties. Those did happen here, but he collected cell phones, so maybe. But the whole Hansel, where everybody's hanging out, having a good time, people being in the moment. I like watching these movies back in this time frame, and I really want to push for more of these because it's a different time in our lives to connect with. And I think the more that we do these, the more that Steve pushes the boundaries for us and helps coax us, it's going to be, I think it's the transition for Shat the Movies, where we go into more modern films and hopefully lure in some of the kids.
I think, Big D, you've internally been debating a decision that's already been made de facto. We're doing movies from the 2000s and the 70s pretty frequently right now. But I think you and I, maybe we're discovering that we do the podcast for different reasons. Like you're doing it in the true spirit of Shat the Movies, which is, were the movies you watched when you were growing up really that good? And I think the joy that I found in doing the podcast is that going back to the 80s and 90s, it gives me, two things. One is a chance to experience movies that were so long ago that I don't remember them, right? I've seen them, but it's so long ago I don't remember them. I remember Zoolander.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember Carrie. Or it gives me a chance to see a film that I've never seen that I missed from the 80s and 90s and have yet to experience, right? From that standpoint, these early 2000s movies, I think I've seen pretty much all of them. Like next week's movie, which shall go unnamed, I've not seen it. It's from 1990. I'm excited to see it. And if we were doing, all 2001, 2002, 2003, I'd be missing out on something like that.
And I agree. I think it's because where this movie fell in our recent string.
Yeah, that's true.
This was so close to home. Like it came on. I was smiling immediately. I was in a comfortable place. I wasn't translating German as they're running through town or on a French beach resort painting all of the cabanas, looking at the little slug. This movie was my warm, fuzzy place. Recently hasn't been the 80s and 90s films of me growing up. It has been a challenge. The gauntlet was thrown down by the listeners to do films that were not my comfort zone. So I think you're right. I wouldn't want to do only 2000s because this would become repetitive. You need the old stuff, which is the core of what we're about and our movie experiences that shaped us. So I think it's balance. So I don't ever want to go full 2000s until all of our listeners have died.
I guess you have a lot of things to ponder.
Yes.
Now's the time of the podcast to give our wipe score for Zoolander. The wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes to get our respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's being really, really, really good looking. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It's dying in a freak gasoline fight accident. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your Shat score for Zoolander?
So this is one of those that as we recorded, my feelings have changed. I came into this, I was going to give it a half wipe. I was in my comfort zone, my warm, safe place, and where this took me back. It's not a perfect film. I was going to go half wipe, but I think it's probably closer to a 0.75 or even a 1. I think I'll go with a 1 wipe. Pretty good. But as we talked about some of the other Ben Stiller films, I think those are better complete films. The concept was kind of simple, but I laughed. It made me happy. Going back to the 2000s, I think Tropic Thunder, that might be a perfect film. If I'm remembering it correctly, it's people would say it's problematic today, but I think it was genius. And that it actually got some nominations for some prestigious awards. So I hope that we could do Tropic Thunder because I think that would be apex Ben Stiller where he's a genius. I think that might be a perfect score. For this, it's not quite there, but it is, I think, a 1 wipe film.
I think Tropic Thunder might surprise you because every person I've talked with about that movie is like, oh, I love that movie. I don't think everybody gets it. I think everybody might get Tropic Thunder. I think there's a suspicion that it's not okay to laugh at it, but everybody agrees that it is okay to laugh at it. I do agree with you, Big D. This movie did a lot with very little. I think about things like Ted Lasso, right? The fact that they were able to do multiple seasons off of such a simple premise that should really just be one sketch. Same thing goes for Zoolander, right? They did a lot with very little. I was very impressed with that. And it is incredibly funny. But I agree with Hot Sauce Steve here that I thought it was a lot funnier before I rewatched it. And it slipped a little bit. I think that from the beginning, before they start introducing everybody else into the movie, when it's just Derek as the joke by himself for that first 15, 20 minutes or so, not as strong as it could be. It does get better as it goes along. And then it kind of ends in a note. But at its climax, it is pretty fantastic. So I'm going to go with 1.5 wipes. And with 1.5 wipes from me and 1 wipe from you, Big D, that gives us an average wipe score of 1.25 wipes for Zoolander.
I think you put it very well. That now ties us in the 89 spot with 2 other films, The Road Warrior and 4 Weddings and a Funeral.
Respectable.
Slightly better than RoboCop and Big Trouble in Little China.
Wow.
Slightly worse than Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Better Off Dead, and When Harry Met Sally.
And RoboCop is just getting shafted lately. What the fuck?
Oh, Kerry, gross.
Yeah.
That was Kerry. Yeah, we all said it was a 0.5 wipe, and then Kerry came in with a 3.75. That's Detroit's finest right there, Gene.
There you go.
I remember walking around Detroit with you a little over a year ago, being like, freeze, punk.
Clarence Boddicker is bugging me.
Yes. Yeah, that was a good film.
Speaking of Donald Trump, being in this movie. Did you see when he was in Detroit?
What, was he listening to music when he was playing the music?
No. He was in Detroit, and he's like, Kamala Harris gets elected. The whole country's going to be like Detroit.
I thought Detroit was kind of awesome.
Well, I mean, you just don't say whether or not you think that's good or not. You don't say that in front of a crowd of people in Detroit.
I don't think the people who were supporting him were really thinking that. But
like, fuck where I live. This place sucks.
I agree. It sucks.
Fuck the Lions.
Yeah. No, Lions are great. And Steve, I don't get it. Steve's from Minnesota, but he's a Lions fan?
No, he lives in Minnesota.
Oh,
he's from Michigan.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That would make sense. Okay.
Loyal like a lion. Before we close out, I do want to get to one email, one contribution to the Arizona Animal Welfare League Walk to Save Animals that I'm doing. So I wanted to send a big thank you out to Dorothy C., donated in memory of Sleepy the cat. She says, Gene, stop being so hard on yourself. You're a lot of people's favorite, including mine. Thanks, Dorothy. I got one person.
You're my favorite, too.
Oh, well, that's good. You're my favorite host. Oh, look at that.
We're like Hansel and Zoolander making up. You made me want to do podcasting. When I listened to Clean Sheets, you were the one who got me into it, Gene. You're my idol.
Big D, I'm sorry I was whack.
Let's go have some tea.
And if you would like to contribute to the Walk to Save Animals, there's still time. Just go to support.aawl.org/Gene Lyons, all one word, and we'll read your dedication to your animal, past or present, on the podcast. Next, I have an email from James who says, Morning Shat crew. What a great start to my morning as I was driving into work and finishing up Close Encounters to hear Tom. Like I said at the end of my SLC Punk commission, I would love to commission a movie for Tom, and it has to be Best of the Best 3, no turning back. No turning back must always be said out loud in the most gravely 90s movie trailer voice. Tom's in it. Nazis get punched. There may be a clown. Who knows what else? I have only seen the first Best of the Best and can't wait to attempt to find this gem. Cash is a little tight, but I'd love to kick it off with like $50 and just send you the rest here and there so we can get it on the calendar for Tom. Much love, James. Well, Big D, seeing as how Best of the Best 3 probably won't get on the Shat calendar until sometime in 2025, I think we could put James on like a layaway plan.
Hell yeah, of course.
All right.
Of course, yeah. And that would give us time to find this gem because I'm going to sense this is going to be like a Betty Blue. We're going to have to find it on some international eBay site to get a copy.
Well, I've got a DVD player now, so maybe we'll just find it on DVD.
Anything's possible.
It'll be Best of the Best 3, and on the flip side of it, it's Faces of Death 3. 2 for 1.
Well, you got to say the full title, Gene.
Best of the Best 3, no turning back.
Yeah, there you go. Now you got it.
All right. Well, thanks, James, for your email. If you'd like to write us, it's host@shatpod.com, or you can go to shatpod.com on any device to leave us a voicemail. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
So, Gene, I don't know if I've had some kind of like a something go on with me. I cannot remember if I've seen Zoolander 2. Have you seen Zoolander 2?
I have, but I wiped it from my memory. Only after reading the synopsis that I remember that I had seen it. It is very bad. And it's weird because a lot of the cast is back.
So give me a basic summary. Because I don't think I've seen it.
Derek and Hansel team up again. It turns into like an Austin Powers thing where like somebody's killing, like assassinating people and they've got to stop it.
Okay, I did not see that. Just like I did not see Coming to America 2.
That I did not see.
No, didn't want to.
I didn't even know that existed.
Gene, next week in this supernatural thriller starring Lou Diamond Phillips as Detective Russell Logan, who captures and executes a serial killer named Patrick Channing, only to discover that Channing has been resurrected with supernatural abilities, now possessing the first power, the ability to inhabit other bodies. Channing continues the killing spree from beyond the grave. This is a first for both of us, Gene.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what we're getting into, but it's sounds like some dark territory.
And if you didn't get enough of the Shat Halloween Spooktacular, this is going to throw you right back because this is basically Michael Myers if they explained what the fuck's going on with him. So we got that, plus Lou Diamond Phillips.
It sounds like also, wasn't there a movie like Shocker, where there's a serial killer who gets electrocuted and then he comes back to life and he can like travel through the wires? I think it's called Shockers. I can picture the poster. And it's an inmate being electrocuted.
Shocker.
And Gene, that was commissioned by Omar, came out in 1990, only made $22 million at the box office, but it'll be a first for both of us.
I remember when Omar wrote in the request for this. God, that was a while ago, but I remember thinking, wow, you saw this as a child. That's very dark, Omar, very dark. But thank you so much for commissioning it. Thank you, Hot Sauce Steve, for commissioning Zoolander with your win of the Fantasy Football League. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. You should follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. You can email us, host@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
Since the beginning of time, Satan has worked to create the perfect killer. One who kills many without reason. One who cannot be stopped. Today, that man exists. Be warned.
We're just going to go through a very small door here.
Lou Diamond Phillips is hunting a man who kills for the sake of killing. Tracy Griffith might be the only one who can help stop him.
I know where he's going next.
What? Oh. But this location fits the pentagram pattern on the map, and my informant says this is where he's going to strike next.
This is the third time in less than 5 years that Logan has been responsible for the death or capture of a serial killer.
See you around, buddy boy.
I doubt it.
Each death makes him stronger.
How did you know where he was going next?
I opened myself up to him. You might have executed his body, but his spirit has been released.
He has the third power. He could be anywhere.
How's the stomach, buddy boy?
He has the second power.
Hi, cutie.
He could be anyone.
Sister.
Oh, I'm afraid she's not here.
Now, he has the first power.
See you around, buddy boy.
Immortality.
You don't have any idea of what you'll be facing.
You can't go on killing forever.
You wanna bet?
The first power.
He didn't care about, you know, the what were they? What did they say? They weren't, I don't want to say midgets. What did they say?
Little people.